Before we get into my episode 2 review, let's look at some interesting news about Amazon in this production, that being Fallout. Variety is reporting that Amazon is set to receive $25 million in California tax credits to relocate to California to shoot season 2. Now, I have postulated offline that the whole reason Amazon moved up the date from April 12th to April 10th for a release, which seemed kind of loosey-goosey, grab-assy if you ask me, is because I thought they were panicking over what were fair to middling reviews. The original IMDb score for Fallout on Amazon was 2 out of 10. Within 10 minutes, that magically shot up to 7 out of 10. Now, am I saying that there's some fraud or some shenanigans or somebody in Hollywood might be doing something dishonest? Absolutely not. But do I think that? Absolutely yes. Amazon has not officially announced a second season for the post-apocalyptic series, but if the first season is as successful as envisioned, then I can't imagine we won't be spending more time in the post-nuclear wasteland, according to this article from GameFragger. Certainly would explain why Amazon moved up the release date from April 12th to April 10th to make it look like it got more views or to allow for more views on the Nielsen ratings, and also why they dumped all the episodes at once as opposed to the weekly release schedule that they've done for Wheel of Time, Rings of Power. You know, the problem with those shows is that everybody got to see that the viewership just kept tanking weekly. Wheel of Time, less than 1/3 of people finished it in season 2. Rings of Power, 36% finished watching that very expensive production of Not Middle Earth. Let's get into episode 2 of Fallout. Episode 2 starts out jarringly and horrifyingly with puppies being thrown, newborn puppies being thrown into an incinerator. Pretty damn horrifying. Is it faithful to Fallout? Fallout 3? I certainly do think so. Fallout 4? I think that's debatable. What did you think about that? Throwing newborn puppies into the incinerator? Tell me. Eventually, what I believe to be the Enclave, a scientist who's the MacGuffin from episode 1 that needs to be followed by Ghoul Guy, who was dug up out of the ground, he's trying to train a dog. I believe it's a Belgian Malinois for some reason. This is obviously an homage to dog meat. That scientist then proceeds to inject himself with some type of glowing chip thing, puts it into his brain, screams, and then apparently is okay. For whatever reason, he decides to flee the Enclave location, and while he's escaping, we have probably one of the most cringe things to happen in this episode, and there are several. He wanders by a machine gun, a turret. Now, if you spent time building settlements the way I did in Fallout 4, you will recognize that, I believe, as the heavy machine gun. What's really twisted and weird about this is that the Enclave scientist guy walks up to the turret, which immediately looks like it's going to shoot him, and then the machine gun opens up on him at point blank range and misses him entirely as he walks. He literally fast walks, doesn't even run from this machine gun, and he and the dog get away completely unscathed. Was it supposed to be funny? We then jump back to Fallout as female Vault 33 girl wandering along the seashore. I had a lot of hate in my comments section for my episode 1 review. Thank you for your view and comments, by the way. That seemed to want to infer that I was afraid of strong females. You're kind of missing the point of all that. Now, if we're going to play this game, let's go back to what the basis of Fallout was. When you created a character, regardless of gender, you had special attributes. This Lucy, the Fallout as female girl, seems to have eights, nines out of the gate. If you remember creating a character within the world of Fallout, you had strengths and you had weaknesses. They affected how you interacted with the game until you progressed through the game. Now, could you become godlike with your attributes and your ability to carry weight and shoot weapons and your intellect? Absolutely. But you had to earn it. In this case, the point that I was making for episode 1, and I firmly believe it stands, is that we have a Mary Sue that is shown. Actually, that's not right. We're told is perfect at everything, and now she's out of the vault doing quaint things. These scenes with the Fallout as female lady wandering around are actually beautiful. There's excellent cinematography in all of this. There are some jarring inconsistencies with the stage dressing, where we have what look to be brand new trikes or brand new ceramics in a house which is dusty and appears to have been irradiated. And yet we have a perfect shiny tea set on display. Is it a nitpick? Yes, but the problem is that occurs more and more and more as the episode goes along, and I'll point those things out as we go. Fallout as female lady starts a fire at night. Of course, in the apocalypse, you're going to create a light source that can draw people for miles. And she's told this as she finds out that, ta-da, the escaped Enclave science guy is there with dog meat, or whatever it is, to tell her that she needs to go back to the vault. We get a scene of dog meat going after a rad roach, which, again, game accurate. We are reminded that Fallout a female lady is looking for her dad. A storyline very reminiscent of Fallout 3 for those of you who've played it. I'm being very generous with that statement. Then we cut back to the black guy who's supposed to be part of the Brotherhood of Steel, which doesn't act like the Brotherhood of Steel. And he's flying in a helicopter with a total asshole because any man is either stupid or evil in this adaptation because it's on Amazon. Just a reminder, the only reason he's there is because what appears to be his comrade in basic training, somebody stuck razor blades in they-them's boots because they were the bestest they-them ever and they were supposed to get the job. And instead it went to this guy who now has a job that it is very apparent as the episode goes on, he should have never, ever been given. The knight on the helicopter uses a bunch of profanity, sits there with his leg mansplaining, legs splayed wide open, committing all kinds of microaggressions if you're a leftist lunatic, and then tells the pilot to land the helicopter because, quote, he wants to kill something. If you've played the games at all, this is completely out of character with the Brotherhood of Steel. We jump back to escaped Enclave science guy with wannabe dog meat, wandering around, has no Geiger counter, has no ability to know what's going on. And again, if you've played Fallout 3, Fallout 4, you know the importance of not wandering into areas that are high in radiation. Why? Because much like in the real world, it'll kill you. But here's the guy wandering around in his white lab coat, and he comes across a monster cave. My first thought was, there's a death claw in there. Well, I was wrong, but we'll get to that. We jump back to, again, I didn't earn this job black guy who's with asshole patriarchy Brotherhood of Steel knight wandering around, and now instead of being in the desert, they're in the forest. They seem to be in the same forest that the Enclave science guy was just in the last scene. How? Don't know. How big is this world? Apparently really, really small, but that's besides the point. The armor looks fantastic in this episode for the Brotherhood of Steel. I mean, outstanding. I want to give points for that. Visually, this show has been looking really, really good. The cinematography looks fantastic. But here we are again at the same cave the Enclave scientist was at, and the show starts to show signs of what the remainder of the episode is going to suffer, and those would be issues of pacing. Brotherhood of Steel patriarchal asshole guy calls the squire who didn't earn his job, who's not qualified to be there, a dipshit, again showing either the disdain that the writers have for any military organization, or maybe it's just men in general. To me, this has the agenda vibe of, if you have a gun and you're a man, then you have a small penis. And so we've got this weird dynamic of, again, men are either stupid or evil. And as a matter of fact, the knight is a coward. He sends his basically unarmed, except for a sidearm squire, again, the guy who shouldn't be there, into the cave to find out what's going on, and keeps acting like he's terrified. This guy in power armor, this would never happen. And as it happens, they wake the bear, literally. They have a Yugai bear, or Yuga bear, that's how I say it from the games. The knight in the power armor with the big guns, what does he do when confronted with this bear? He runs away crying like a little bitch. We then get a scene of the irradiated, oversized Yugai bear chowing on the knight in his power armor, and it's the unqualified, I shouldn't be there, I didn't earn this squire who shoots the Yugai with his 9mm or 10mm pistol, depending on how you look at it and what game we're talking about for Fallout. None of this makes any sense. We then have the knight crying like a little girl who just dropped her lollipop on an anthill. Tell me again there is an agenda in this. The helmet comes off, and who is it but the most rabid leftist in Hollywood? Someone with the worst case of TDS I think I've ever seen, Michael Rappaport. Again, completely out of character, he curses out the entire military organization that he's part of. He says, fuck the clerics, fuck everybody. Cries some more. He then goes on to threaten the squire that he sent down the cave to go find out what was in it, because he's a little bitch with a big gun overcompensating, according to the writers, apparently, of this show. And it turns out that the knight, again, Michael Rappaport, is grievously injured despite wearing the most modern form of power armor. Somehow the bear hurt him to the point where he's dying, and he tells unqualified squire guy to get him a stim pack. Well, what does our man do? What is this fine gentleman, again, who didn't earn what he got in the role that he is in to protect this knight? He lets the knight die. Amazon, have you thought about the optics of this again? Let's trace the character development of this. You have an African-American recruit who sabotages a they-them comrade who's better at the job than he is, who then goes on a mission, who then proceeds to let who he's supposed to report to, his superior, his officer in the field, die. Oh, but it gets better. Not only does it let the knight die, he then proceeds to take his dead body out of the power armor. And what does the African-American who's not qualified for his job do? He steals the power armor and pretends to be a knight, pretends to be qualified to use this advanced weapon system. Is anybody over there at Amazon thinking? Or are they thinking, you know what? Let's just replace the patriarchy and the Caucasian in this role with an unqualified minority because reasons. I don't get it. These are actions I would find in a raider, not in someone who was raised and trained by the Brotherhood of Steel. If you disagree with me, tell me in the comments section below. We go back to the Fallout's female chick. Oh, hey, you know where she is? You're not going to believe it. She's in the exact same woods that Enclave science guy was in, and that power armor guy who got chowed on by the Yugai and the squire was just at. It's a very small world. It's very, very convenient. After she wanders through that, she stumbles into a trading post, and we get a lot of scenery where it looks like Megaton, again, from Fallout 3. She wanders through these woods as she gets closer to this Megaton-like wannabe place, and there's junk strewn everywhere and old cars. The problem is that in some of these scenes, I don't know if they just decided not to do CGI to make things look older, but there looks to be brand new stuff piled on top of much older stuff. And I'm not being a nitpick. It's much like the scene from when she was over by the shoreline walking into the house with the absolutely perfect ceramics or perfect bicycles that were on the front lawn after 200 years. We now have piles of rusted junk which would be authentic. after 200 years with brand new shiny looking things on top. Amazon, John Nolan, was that a CG era? Did they stop giving you money to do this? What's the story? Also, in an homage to Fallout 4, we see a baseball scoreboard that's in the background. We come across a two-headed ox. Again, wonderful Easter eggs from the Fallout series. So here we have the Fallout is female lady in the megaton-like town, and who should be there but, yes, you guessed it, the MacGuffin carrier, the Enclave scientists with the dog meat wannabe. What a small world. Not only that, but the ghoul guy that got dug up in episode 1, he's chilling with his cowboy hat over his eyes like a villain, apparently waiting for them to come because he read the script. We get some dialogue, and the ghoul guy bounty hunter has some interaction with the Enclave science guy, and then immediately shoots him after the Fallout is female lady tries to have a very calm conversation with him. Needless to say, that triggers everybody in the Megaton wannabe town. We do get what I think is a very interesting and fascinating take on how the VATS combat system would work within the Fallout game. I have to be fair here. This is probably the best part of the episode with the shooting. Anything involving the ghoul character in this Fallout series, it's really, to me, the only stuff that I am 100% on board with. I'm not sure why the ghoul guy can get shot over and over and over and over and over again with no ill effects. Maybe this story will tell me as I progress through this season of television. We start to get lots and lots of slow motion like Zack Snyder was sitting in giving John Nolan advice. And we get more Portlandia humor and dialogue that is really out of place in this, in my opinion. But don't worry. We've got the Fallout is female lady there. We've got the ghoul bounty hunter who is there. Guess who else shows up? You're never going to guess. That's right. The guy who stole the Brotherhood of Power Armor is there. And guess what? He's there to save the day. Using the power armor, he tries to beat the shit out of the ghoul, but as I mentioned before, the ghoul is just indestructible. The shopkeeper then gives the location of the woman who stole her dad from episode 1, apparently. The ghoul guy gets the better of the dude who stole the power armor. And then black guy in stolen power armor becomes a joke. Flying around, out of control, in the air, like a kid's balloon, because the ghoul apparently cut one of his hydraulic hoses. We then get a scene of the Fallout as female chick wandering in the desert with the Enclave escape science guy who has the meat grinder artificial limb on. Enclave science guy says he's not going to make it, that he took a banana-flavored cyanide pill. And we get more Portlandia humor. Sets her on a quest, besides following her father, now wants her to change the future. How is she going to do this, you ask? Well, the Enclave science guy, who's dying, hands her a handheld chainsaw and says, cut off my head. And mysteriously, Enclave science guy knows her name and knows all about her. The episode ends with the Fallout is female lady chainsawing off the Enclave scientist's head. And that's the end of episode 2. My issues with this episode are pacing primarily, and I know the Hollywood Reporter covered this in their article from April 9th, and I didn't know what it meant until probably the end of this episode. The characterization and the storyline for the Brotherhood of Steel Squire, who acts nothing like a Brotherhood of Steel Squire would in an organization called the Brotherhood of Steel, which is nothing like the Brotherhood of Steel, with knights in power armor who are nothing like the Brotherhood of Steel. I can only surmise that the remainder of this season of television will be the creators of the show, and very likely Bethesda themselves, destroying what came in the games before. Probably Fallout 1, Fallout 2, and especially New Vegas. I could be wrong about that, but it certainly does seem like they're going out of their way to destroy things that might be problematic. And by problematic, meaning if you have your head so far up your ass that you live this weird Maoist commie lifestyle where everything is microaggressions and men are bad, then I guess this show and storyline is made for you with them. To me, I find it ridiculous and blatantly obvious. This episode really took a long time in a lot of its scenes, especially around the cave with the I'm Not a Knight, with the Stolen Valor Esquire. Where it goes from here, I don't know. I'm going to try and watch episode 3. I can really only take this show in one episode doses. I could not imagine being trapped having to watch this back to back to back. What did you think about this episode? What did you think about this show? If you watched it again, to those people who were critical of my episode 1 video, I'm glad you enjoyed the show. I wish something was made that I could. Maybe this gets better. But right now, I'm mostly just bored. Sad, quite honestly, because as I said in my episode 1 review, there's so much care that went into the set pieces and the Easter eggs and the atmospherics, and there's some truly beautiful cinematography, and the ghoul is fantastic. But the stories with the Fallout as female chick and this inexplicably racist depiction of I'm going to armor jack the knight that I allowed to die because he hurt my feelings storyline, I don't get it. Anyway, I'm Salty Traveling C. You have a good one.